Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. SuperCoach YouTube edition. This episode, I'm going to be talking about my 2024 team and locking it in, coming right up. Right, so as you can see, I have a team here of rookies selected. I'm going to give some quick disclaimers before I launch into my team selection. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm locking in a team from January 2024, locking it in. Will not make changes. The disclaimers are the changes can happen to players priced 250k and below. Obviously, I don't know which rookies are going to be debuting, and I want this to be a competitive team as much as possible because the premise of it is we have these ideas in January, we have these players that we like, these ideas, and essentially carried on from 2023, potentially better clarity of the game than when we do leading up to round one. Now, a lot of that will change this year with round zero, but I don't want it. I don't want the influence of preseason. I don't want the influence of round zero. I'm going to lock in my premium selections in in January this year. So the premium guys, the guys who I've looked at and thought absolutely they're a lock in my team, I'm going to talk myself out of most of them for my main team. This will be run obviously weekly as well. I'm going to make the normal trades as I would any other week with this team as well, and we're just going to compare as to how high I can potentially rank with it, and see if my ideas in January were better than what they ended up being. There's so much advice out there. Our opinion gets watered down so much and argued against so heavily from all different angles that we end up going against a lot of our firm beliefs from the beginning of SuperCoach opening up. So here I'm going to lock this in, and despite what happens from now until the start of the season, these will be my premium players. The only other disclaimer is if someone does get injured for round one, they will be moved out. I might offer some alternatives in this video as to if this guy's missing, this is who else I'm looking at. But essentially, that is just to stay as competitive as possible, because even with an unaltered opinion leading up to round one, if someone's missing for injury or for any other reason, I'm not going to start them, am I? So let's keep it as competitive as possible, get the team together. This is my very raw initial thoughts to what my team will look like. And then before all the alterations come, I just want to lock it in. I don't want to think about it anymore. This will be one of my teams for SuperCoach 2024. So let's launch straight into it. We're in defense. I'm going to make a pretty bold decision and say that Nick Dacos is going to be not just my team, but almost everyone's teams. He speaks for himself. I know he has that round zero game, which means he will have a bye in the first 5 weeks, but I don't really care. When he's scoring potentially 5 points per game more than any other defender, that's someone that I absolutely want to lock in. And you can look at 650k and think, how does he possibly back that up? You could also look at it and see that as a value price for Nick Dacos based on how young he is and what he's already done in his career at such a young age. He arguably should be a Brownlow medalist. If he is going to improve at all this year, then that number obviously could go sky high. So I'm going to be on board for that. Not only will I be on board for that, but I'm going to put Sicily and Tom Stewart into my team as well. Now, this is going to get me heavy in defense. Absolutely understandable. This is not going to be everyone's bag. This might not be my bag by round one. But as I see it at the moment, these three, there could be a pretty big gap between these three and the rest of the SuperCoach defenders in 2024. So I'm picking the safest three guys. I'm not going to have to, in my opinion, I shouldn't have to spend up almost at all for any other defender in the entire game if I start these three. There shouldn't be, oh, it's round 7, I need an upgrade, Sicily's still 650k, I can't get him. Stewart is up to 660, or he's still hovering around 610, I can't afford him. I can pick off pretty much from this point a few guys who are cheaper and affordable, and I can really afford to take my time with the defense with these selections. Now, should one of these guys get injured, I'm looking directly at Dan Houston. I would love to start Dan Houston this year. I'm not sure that he has 110 upside. I'm not sure that he has 106.2 upside, but I don't see him having downside under 105. So I think worst case scenario is he peppers this number and this price. He was pretty consistent last year, so not one that I think I'll be able to pick up for 500k during the year. We'll be very happy to pick him up if one of these guys gets injured. If multiple get injured, that's when we're stretching a little bit. I don't want to start Jack Sinclair. Nick Newman has that early bye. If multiple get injured, I think I'll be looking into another position that maybe switching things around a little bit. You can see I do have Curtin in my midfield right now. Rookies and everything pending, things will be able to change, but I highly doubt I'm going to be missing 2 of these guys for round 1 anyway. And I'm going to lock in a 4th premium defender, and it's going to be Hayden Young. Now, a potential role change for Hayden Young this year could be playing a lot more midfield time. Even if he doesn't, I think he's trending in the right direction for a halfbacker. But assuming he does, which he ended the season with, he has 100 plus upside quite comfortably. So price at 94, I think he's probably 5 to 6 points underpriced, and I want to be on that bandwagon from round 1. This is the type of guy who will score 80 in a preseason game playing in the midfield, and he'll have bad efficiency, and people will say, I'm not starting him, I'm not going to start someone who's going to score 80 blah, 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 week in, week out. He's not priced correctly, he could just be bad in the midfield. People will talk themselves out of Hayden Young, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk myself out of him. I think variable things happen all preseason in terms of disposal efficiency and such that we talk ourselves out of, but it's one game. It's such a small sample size. So locking him in straight away. Going over to the midfield, I'm going to bypass all of these guys priced over Nick Dacos and lock in Tom Liberatore. Now, there's been a little bit of chatter in our Slack at the moment about Libba, how he always goes under the radar. I gave him a lot of love last year. He was absolutely locked in for me as a buy upgrade. A lot of people, he had can't remember if it was a slow week or so leading into that, or he was just too expensive and people just bypassed him, and they really suffered for that late in the season because he went bananas. Again, no Bailey Smith this year. I'm not sure if he's exactly got huge upside from this price and this average point, but essentially I don't see any downside. 115 average, worst case scenario. I think that's very, very safe to lock in. And these guys up here, I can see all of them coming down in price at some point. Libba, I really don't know if he gets below that 600k mark. He could do, absolutely, but when that is, whether that's timed enough for people to jump on, I'm not quite sure. Obviously no buy as well early for him, which is great. We're going to scroll down to Zach Butters, who not only doesn't have an early buy, but has the best buy in the game, which he shares with Fremantle. Only 2 teams on that buy. I'm going to lock Butters in, and that's going to help my buy structure immensely off the rip. So extremely ecstatic to lock him in. Obviously, if you look at the lower end of his season, the second half of his season, his selection really just speaks for itself. So it's not a lot of use going too heavy into that one. I'm also going to go in and I'm going to find, who else do I want here? LDU is who I want here. So I suppose not many players have the ceiling that LDU has, and if it wasn't for his body fouling him several times last year, I think he would be higher priced, and his average would have been a lot higher than 113. I think he has 118 plus. He could potentially have 120 plus at some point in his career. Could be this year, might not quite sure, but I want to be on the train when it actually happens. So I'm going to lock him in. Anyone trading into him, anyone having the concerns about his body, and then trading into him, spending a trade to get him, and then potentially having to trade him out with one of these injury concerns that they don't want to start him for. I think that's a worse situation than just starting him and then potentially having to trade him down the line. I've started him. He's not cost me a trade. He's not cost me anything. He's cost me 135k, which comparatively, not a lot of guys around this range that are jumping out of the page, especially if you consider the buy. I like LDU quite a lot. So lastly, I'm going to lock in Andrew Brayshaw. Does share that buy with Port. Another selection that is partially buy related, but if you look at the start of his season last year, for a lot of talk from Fremantle that he had a knee injury, and then essentially the week that they said, oh yeah, he's entirely over his knee injury, I think he scored 149, sub-ton the week after, and then went bananas for the rest of the season. So I actually see him as underpriced by about 30k. I think he can go 113, 115 around that mark. So I think he's an unbelievable selection despite the buy, and he also has that buy. I'm not going to bore everyone with the discussion about the rucks. Essentially, you're choosing between Tim English and going the cheaper route, which I think a lot of people are probably going to do, me included. The more I think about this, the more I feel like I'm going to change this spot in my main team. But Max Gawn is the one that you do have to think about. He's the one that you probably could go Team English, but the extra 130k, I'm just personally not doing it. I don't like it. I think players that are priced over 700k are bound to fail. Not fail as in average 105 for the season, but fail as in a lot of people will probably pick them up cheaper during the year. You don't really come out of the season with a big smile. Oh, I started this guy for 700k plus. Nobody could get him. He was the best pick ever. Generally, if you're starting a 700k player, you know that people are going to get him way more affordable than what you paid for him. And you just hope that they hold out long enough to make it either extremely difficult to trade in or you get enough points on the board. But I think with that 130k, for example, what am I chopping down? Libba down to Jack Steele. I don't even think I can afford that. Sicily down to a speculative defender. I don't want to do that. So the money that I would have to spend to get up to English, I don't think it's worth the sacrifice at this stage. My mind might change, and that is what I'm trying to avoid here. So let's lock him in. Let's lock in the easiest pick in the game, Brodie Grundy. Doesn't need to be discussed at all. Now, Gawn and Grundy both do have the buy. That is going to be annoying, but as you can see, that is why I have avoided any other buy player. You're not going to see many in this team. That trend is going to continue now with maybe the second easiest pick in the game, Jack McRae. Not because he's going to set the world on fire and go back to his 120 plus days, but just because he's going to be a top 6 forward. I'm willing to put any amount on that. Talk to me. You want to cancel bet that Jack McRae is not going to be a top 6 forward? I'll happily accept that bet. So I think he's just such a lock. I know he's only 550k. He's priced at 100. What do you think happens to Jack McRae to make this a failed pick? He would have to lose one of his limbs or something and still try to play through it. It's just not going to happen. He probably just can't be a failed pick, and that's famous last words, but I have such supreme confidence now. I have 594k to spend here, but the rookies are really placeholdery. I have tried to just grab a bunch of the expensive guys so I'm not caught out when it does come to round 1 by overspending on my premiums, but I'm going to leave some money in the bank here and lock in Dylan Moore, so that leaves me with 86k in the bank. Dylan Moore is such an interesting pick because a lot of people are, is Dylan Moore a premium? Why are people looking at Dylan Moore? He averaged 90. You look at his numbers from last year, he was actually super inconsistent. He had high ceiling, low floor. That doesn't usually spell a good pick, especially in the forward line, which can already be volatile as it is. But if you look at their recruiting, they lost Brockman, but they gained Ginnivan. They recruited the best player, the best small forward in the draft. They got Gunston back. And Will Day touch and go for round 1. I think Moore is going to spend a lot of time training in the midfield, or at least in a high half forward role. And to be honest, 90 average, he's doing that from the forward line. What's the chances his role gets worse with these forwards coming into the side? Probably unlikely. So I just think he's the type that is probably locked in just about to a 90 plus average. And if he's not, look, if you've seen Dylan Moore play, you know how much talent he has. I don't think he just rots away in a forward pocket for his entire career. There are bigger and better things there for him in the AFL, and I think we at least see a little bit of that this year. If I had to predict an average for him, it would be about 95 to 100. I think he can pep around that mark. I'm super excited for his season. This pick does come with a bit of duress. I don't like a lot of the second forwards. I am trying to avoid the round 0 players because I'm not going to have that information like you guys are following round 0 to lock in a team. But this is my side. Now, completely unprovoked premium picking where I've just liked these guys, picked them on their merit, locked in this team. This will not change bar the sub 250k guys, which is essentially every single other player that isn't a premium. It's a 12 premium side. I'm super happy with that. No mid prices, which at this time of the season, I like to tell myself I will not get suckered into a mid pricer. Watch that change for round 1. But I am locking this in. You will not see this change. I will post the results to Twitter and to everywhere and to YouTube as we go along. So let's hit save my team and we're locked in. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you do have any changes that you would make to this team, please do comment down below which guys you would take out, which guys you would put in. If there's someone that you really want to start and you know you're going to get talked out of, put it in the comment section below. I'll give you some affirmation as to why I think it's a good pick. You have to stick to your guns on it. There are guys that you will get talked out of, or you will see a 1 game sample size from the preseason, and they will leave your team when you wanted them all January and February. Trust me, it happens every season. So if you need some affirmation, I am here for you. Put a comment down below. We'll check this team out when it comes to round 1. We'll check out how it goes after round 1. Can't wait to go on this ride with you guys. Thanks for tuning in.